Hello everyone, this is Nicholas Pythagoras, and on this YouTube channel we ask the question, how does the truth manifest itself in the real world, or how do human values manifest themselves in the real world? And on this YouTube channel we talk about human consciousness, phenomenology, metaphysics, and all that good and fun stuff. I also want to say that I know my YouTube channel says ancient world, but we're not only just studying the ancient world consciousness, but we're also studying the consciousness of our modern world, because I think that's a very important thing to study as well. I want to say that, sorry I'm not in a suit today. It's just way too hot here in Florida. I really do like the setting. I really do like the outside scenery. I think it adds a nice aesthetic to my YouTube channel. However, it's just way too hot to be doing it in a suit. But I still want to be outside. And honestly, I don't know how my friend does it, because I have a friend that wears a suit every single day. And he was here in Florida, so shout out to you, big guy. Anyways, what inspired this YouTube video was I had a conversation with an atheist. And after finishing talking to them and meditating upon atheism, the philosophy, and seeing how that manifests, how the consciousness manifests in the world, I feel like I connected the dots in a way. I feel like I really hit the nail on the head in my mind about this. I just want to say that, it's kind of like how Spengler talks about the spirit versus the earth, how the earth is an outer manifestation of the consciousness being the soul, or the zeitgeist, the soul of the times, or the spirit of the times. And so basically, just jumping right into it, I want to opine on atheism as a philosophy and how it pertains to our world, our modern world today. So basically, it's like atheism is a philosophy that posits that there's no such thing as the spiritual. We probably are already familiar with this, as in when someone says they are an atheist, they don't believe in God. Now, sometimes some people might say they're agnostic, but that's a different topic. But atheism as a philosophy says that there is no such thing as a spiritual world. That the only thing that exists is the material. And so once you start off with that faulty foundation, then you have to discern, well, how do I discern my value system? What is good? What is right? What is wrong? And so a lot of people say that atheists, atheism, as a result of this philosophy, as a result of this faulty philosophy, the value system will be anything that good is something that satisfies my bodily appetites. That is food, my libido, something that satisfies the bodily appetites, the bodily flesh. And so anything that is bad naturally has to be something that is against the bodily appetites. So that is like accountability or any form of suffering. So there's this natural disinterest between, there's a natural disinterest when it comes to suffering and when it comes to accountability. I think we can see where this is going. As I look back at human history, I think it's quite fascinating, a very much a miracle that we survived the 20th century, because in my opinion, the 20th century was the rise of materialism on the world stage. We saw philosophies such as communism, capitalism, and especially what the Germans were doing as well. What I call dead philosophies, I call them dead philosophies because they do not acknowledge anything substantial, anything that is actually of substance, anything that is pertaining to the spiritual. It's very much a materialistic, looking at the world in a material lens, looking at people as units of productivity, materialism, and not just monetarily. So anyways, going back to our thought experiment. So we already started with the faulty foundation of atheism, which is that the only thing that exists is the material world and not any form of spiritual, not any form of a spiritual world. And then that naturally leads to a value system, which is like anything that is good has to satisfy my bodily pleasures. And anything that is bad is anything that detracts from my bodily pleasures. And I think it's quite fascinating to know life is already suffering. So how can you already try to live a life that is, how can you live a life without suffering when life itself is suffering? There are trials and tribulations. It's also fascinating that God calls us to suffer for Him and for the kingdom of God. Because there are trials and tribulations, and if we offer that up to God, then that will, merit graces for us in the heavenly kingdom. So yes, there are sufferings like the age old question is, yes, there is suffering, there are trials in this world, but how do we reconcile that? Like, how do we actually make meaning out of our suffering, which is exactly what God does. But as an atheist position, going back to the main point of the video, going back to the atheist position, when you start with this faulty philosophy of atheism that's already inherently materialistic, it leads to materialism, and then you have this discernment of your value system, which is anything good is something that satisfies my body, and anything bad is anything that detracts from my body, which is suffering and accountability. Then you look at how, I think we can see where this is going, you look at how it is implemented, how it's being implemented in the world today as the outer manifestation of this consciousness, as the outer manifestation of this zeitgeist. And so we see in the 20th century, especially with the communists, that they really purged their own civilization because they were seeing their population as just materialism, that everything, and especially we can see that with capitalism, in the sense that like basically anyone who doesn't satisfy their the other person's body, the other person's fleshly appetites, basically we can see it in capitalism in a way today, because it's like basically it's the motto that like, you're only my friend if you can satisfy me in some way. You're only my friend if you can serve me in some way, which doesn't sound like a very good friend at all. Because it's like the only people who are my friends are people who are satisfying me in some way, whether that's monetarily, like profits, or it usually boils down to looks, status, money, or power. And usually it's power. Everything is like power, but the manifestation of it in our time period is money. So the philosophy is power, but the outer manifestation of it in this time period, in this epoch, is money. But yeah, usually like the other things are like looks, status, money, and power. And I think we can see it in marriages today, where it's like and the dating scene today, which it's like, and the way that they see marriage is like as this transactional contract. That I'm only going to be with you if it satisfies me in some way. It satisfies my body in some way. It satisfies my fleshly appetites in some ways. And so once that stops happening, the divorce happens. But, we can see this idea of like, not just marriage, but friendships and relationships being transactional. And why does it have to be transactional in the context of atheism? It's because atheism only posits that there's a material world. So, like, the value is that it has to satisfy me, or else it's not going to be good. It has to satisfy my bodily desires, or else it's not good, which is what then lends itself to this idea that relationships are transactional. They have to be materialistic. Like, why would I sacrifice to someone if they don't give me any benefit to my body? And so it has a natural disinterest with suffering and accountability. And it's not just marriages, but as I said, it's friendships, it's human relationships. And we are seeing the kind of the death of this materialism. Frankly, just to go on a little bit of a side note, but I think especially with Gen Z, and maybe you can see it with Gen Alpha as well, this kind of new zeitgeist, this kind of new idea of like, there's more to life than the material. There's more to life than just satisfying your bodily pleasures, than money. And frankly, I think it's a revelation with Gen Z and Gen Alpha especially, because we don't have money. And I'm speaking as like someone in their mid-20s, as a Gen Z person. We don't have money. Like literally, it's like, so even if we like wanted to we don't have money. And so there's no way that we can actually like satisfy like this like monetary, like bodily, like fleshly, like appetite. And so we're kind of forced to go into something else and search for something new, which is the spiritual. But that's why people are being led to Christ. People are being led to, we're having an Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, even some Protestant kind of, I don't want to say revolution, but this kind of revelation rather, where people are turning to Christ in a spiritual way, because they realize that materialism isn't the only thing that like has to be satisfied, but something deeper. There's something more to life than materialism, and that's the spirit. And unfortunately, some people are going to paganism. And if you're one of those people, I pray for your conversion. But yeah, unfortunately, some people are going to paganism. But the idea is that there's more than something. There's more than the material world, and that's why people are going into the spiritual world, or they're looking more into spiritual matters. And I think it's especially happening with Gen Z and Gen Alpha because we literally don't have the option. Most of us don't have that option because most of us have had the world taken away from us. Which I would say, in some sense, it's kind of healthy because, focus less on the world and focus more on God, in that sort of way. So in that way, it is healthy. But anyways, yeah, that's the video, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you have any thoughts, please post them. Please post them in the comment section below. Yeah, on this YouTube channel, we talk about human consciousness, phenomenology, metaphysics, the spiritual, as well as the outer manifestation of the spiritual. So the spirit and the world. And so, yeah, keep on looking out for those videos and take care, y'all.